welcome Canada, and friends of the Muslim Brotherhood hired to sue me in the present, future, past, whatever it is. We have a great show, and we're live. Okay, I'll start off by leveling with everyone. We are not, in fact, actually live. I'm alive, you're live, and they might say live somewhere, or it might say streaming, but here's the deal. When to shoot in the studio, I can't film at 8 p.m. because it's past my bedtime. Maybe your bedtime too. Complications. So technically, I am live because I do have only a 1 hour short window to film this, and there is no do-overs. Well, there is a bit of do-overs if lightning hits the studio, and then we have to actually redo that part over, and people are like, what's happening? So here's the thing. I'm talking at you right now from the past. You're in the future maybe engaging with me on Facebook or YouTube. So I've made this more, I've knocked down the veneer. I'm now saying hello to you with your talking. Maybe you're talking saying, hi, Daniel. Maybe you're talking about your specific cause you want me to rant about today. Who knows? I'm talking with you, yelling at you, you're yelling at me. This might be productive. So some of you have probably figured that out for the fact that the YouTube premiere is at the same time as the Facebook live video. So here we are. Veil lifted. Tonight's show and all shows going forward will be pre-recorded on the day and then sent out as a live a few hours later, and then I'll interact with you. So maybe we'll have some questions built into the show. What do you want to yell at Daniel today? We'll figure it out together. So moving on. Tonight is a great show. Because of what I just said, we're only going to go over a bit of what the throne speech covered because it's going on right now. Now, other thing we need to get to is Justin Trudeau's made it, guys. Now, it's not Justin Trudeau that admires the basic dictatorship of China, but China is admiring Justin Trudeau's initiative in trying to build his own basic dictatorship. So this is great progress for our progressives in Canada, and I'm very proud of them. We also have the horrific hate crime against the Muslim man caretaker outside the mosque. I want to get into that, and just how, like, I want to show you that it's not like CBC is like controlled by Muslims or whatever. They know they legitimately suck at their jobs. The media just legitimately sucks at covering hate crimes. Any type of hate crime across the board. It is not a special anti-white or anti-Muslim thing. They just suck, and we're going to go over why. We also have Hunter Biden got $3.5 million from a billionaire wife of a Moscow mayor who's heavily connected to Putin, one of the oligarchs. But the Rushgate people have nothing to say about that. We have many other stories. Today's show will be sponsored by Lululemon, and we have many other things to get into. You know, if not now's thing and terrorists and whatever. Okay, let's just start. Let's start. So, the throne speech. I've only seen a bit of it now, but let's be honest. I reported a rumor from before. Now, the last time I just reported pure rumor conjecture, it was the rumor that Patrick Brown was working on Peter MacKay's campaign. And what do you know, Aaron O'Toole said the exact same thing about 4 days later when he was asked about it in the debates. So that ended up being true. The other rumor I was hearing, that I just reported, pure rumor, I'm putting this out there, is the Conservative Party and the Liberal Party have already rented buses and an airplane, which means they're getting ready for a cross-country campaign. So this throne speech comes off more like an election promise. Now, if you want a breakdown of the throne speech, don't worry. If you're in Canada, every single one of your problems will be solved by the Liberal government, and we will throw money at it. What are we just going to just get out your wallet and just start. Don't worry, we're taking an intersectional feminist approach to just throwing random money at random people, just all the days. Childcare, sure. What do we need in a pandemic? And another multi-billion-dollar entitlement program. Universal basic income, right? We're going to plant trees, intersectional feminist trees. Money, 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 money. So this is Justin Trudeau. And what they're going to do is promise you $80 billion to solve the problem of, insert problem here, you know, my husband snores at night. We're going to have an $84 billion intersectional feminist program focusing on rad black trans femmes research into snoring to tell your husband that he's racist unless he stops snoring. So that's about $84 billion. We're going to another $1 million to make sure that no one says anything mean to anyone on the internet. But actually what I really want to get into in this throne speech, and one of the things the Liberals have been pushing on, to show my lack of hypocrisy, let's say, is they're talking about something that I find very dangerous. And I'm going to explain how it's dangerous, and it will relate to our first story of China and Trudeau, our first official story. The government is talking about cracking down on big tech giants, whoopee, to make them share revenue with Canadian content creators. Now, that would seem like something I'd be pretty much for. I don't make any money off of like the thousands of views and I get off Facebook or whatever. You might be watching this on Facebook now. You might be on YouTube. You might be the lone sociopath who clicked on the Twitter thing and didn't click on the link, and you're watching this on Twitter like and not moving the thing because you love me that much. I love you too. I don't make any money off that, but I'm fine with that sort of arrangement. Now, what the government wants to do is find a way for me to make money off of the content I'm creating on social media. That sounds very benevolent, right? It sounds very up their alley, right? Rob to the rich, give to the poor, right? I'm just the little guy, Facebook is the big guy. Facebook should be giving me money because I'm creating content to keep them on their site, informing Canadians about Canadian issues. That sounds like a slam dunk. However, here's the problem. This gets into a situation where they can backdoor a sort of journalistic registration concept. Remember, this is what the Heritage Minister, Stefan Himmler, was on beforehand, about medias need to be licensed, right? This is creative content. Canadian content creators probably have to go through some sort of, vetting process at the government, getting some sort of government license that allows them then to extort money and take money from the tech giants. Now, it will never happen, right? Which is one of the reasons, again, it's just not going to happen. It's infeasible. But the process to try and make it happen, I see through this. I absolutely see through this. I see this as a means to force content creators to register themselves with the government, and then even if there is a financial benefit, then being at the control of the government to have all their benefits stripped if they ever walk outside party lines or standard socially acceptable lines. That is what I see here, and that's why I'm firmly against it. So yes, it's Trudeau's plan. When I say every problem and everyone gets a billion, $1 million, that includes me and what I'm doing. Technically, there is a plan in the throne speech right now to give Daniel Boardman $1 billion, $1 from the tech giants. What's the number? A gabillion, million, zillion. For me, just for me and existing. Oh, how nice. However, it's fairy tale nonsense. And it's really, really dangerous. So there will be an article out on the National Telegraph either tonight or tomorrow with a sort of a meta-analysis of the whole throne speech, what you need to know, what you can take away. That will be shared along pages and platforms on Facebook and Twitter and whatever. So if you want further breakdown, why weren't you covering this? You can either yell at me in the comments now, or maybe you are yelling at me, good for you. And maybe I'm yelling at you. Or maybe I've had a mental breakdown right now and I'm walking away, who knows? Anyway, moving on to story 1B. So this is what I say, China is now admiring Justin Trudeau's basic dictatorship. Let's bring up this article that outlines what the Chinese government, see, Beijing is talking about having only, registered journalists reporting on Hong Kong because there's too much disinformation going on in Hong Kong, guys. We need the trusted news sources. Only the news sources trusted by the CCP will be, come on. This is ridiculous. And this is exactly what, I just talked about this. This is exactly what Justin Trudeau tried to do in Canada. Only registered, licensed media corporation. And everyone's like, wait, what's a licensed media? What the hell does that mean? Oh, walked it back. Oh, blah, blah, blah. No, we were never talking about licensing media, only in terms of Discovery Media. Do you remember when they just threw in Discovery Media? And I was like, what the hell does that mean? Well, it means whatever Justin Trudeau and his ministers want it to mean. And they've been pushing this. And if you think that you've beaten back the government on all this nonsense, may I remind you of last week's episode when on Democracy Day, they literally talked about destroying democratic institutions. I mean, the Democracy Day throne speech from last week is directly what we're talking about this week. Because in Democracy Day, they talked about, helping out the fundamental principles of democracy by, what was it? Making sure that there's no illegal content and having, licensed, and trusted fact checkers, making sure there's no disinformation. So the government's trusted fact checkers will make sure there's no disinformation right out there. This is for Democracy Day. And then you see the Chinese go, oh, great idea. That, when the Communist Party of China, how many millions of Muslims in concentration camps there? So when you have millions of Muslims in concentration camps, you can't be thinking of new progressive ideologies. That's why you need Justin Trudeau to fill the gaps and help you out with that. Now let's see what infrastructure Barbie has to say about things like free speech. Let's bring up her tweet here. And again, she mentions Stéphane Gibault. And here she is. Here you have her talking about these things. Look at her talking here. Look at the end of this tweet. We believe in free speech, and we hope that the media outlets, regulate themselves. But if they can't regulate hate, the government will step in and do it. Like, you can't do that in this day and age, okay? What if the person who is spreading hate, let's say you have, I'm just thinking of all the liberal politicians I'm trying to think of someone who has intersectional qualities but isn't openly affiliated with terrorists. Give me a minute. Let's say you have a hypothetical liberal minister that isn't affiliated with a terrorist organization. And that elected member is sitting there and someone's saying something, they're liberal, let's just assume they're a Khalistani extremist or something. They're going off. And they're like, oh my God, and it's just some 12-year-old Peruvian. Like, what's that on your head, you loser? That's a 12-year-old Peruvian. Like, how do you stop that on the internet? The government then has to restrict, where does this end? Where does it start? Where does it start to begin with? Oh, clearly it starts with mean tweets at literal ministers in the government, like cabinet ministers, some of the most important public figures in our country. You're not allowed to say mean things to, or else the government has to step in and stop it. Come on. Like, could you be any more transparent on these laws? So that's Catherine McKenna, and she's bringing up these type of things, like we need to restrict speech, and we need to get on the government hate speech stuff. You see that in Justin Trudeau's throne speech. I'm sure you're going to we're going to build it through an intersectional feminist framework. That's how we're going to rebuild Canada. Like, I have one question to these people. Like, one question. And I would like a serious answer. If rebuilding ourselves and focusing on diversity adds one more month to the length of recovery, adds one more month to the COVID-19 pandemic, is it worth it? I just want to know your answer to that. Is it worth it? And if it's not worth it, then maybe cut down the diversity stuff. And if you say, if it is worth it, right, it's more important than the pandemic, then just admit it has nothing to do with the pandemic. You just want to push diversity. It's not like we need a diverse representation to stop the pandemic or whatever. It's we want to stop the pandemic, but we also are prioritizing diversity, which is more important than the pandemic. Just be honest. You remember the other thing that was in the Democracy Day stuff of basically sending our sovereignty over to the UN? Apparently by the end of the year, we'll be having legislation adopting the UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. Sounds nice. But do you really think the United Nations cares one bit about the Indigenous people? That's what I'm saying. I know we're a bit off the free speech topic here, but I'm going to point out, and I've said this before on different things, if you are a racist and you hate the Indigenous people of Canada, let's say you are fomenting with absolute hatred for Indigenous people right now, and you're watching this show right now, the number one way for you to screw over the Indigenous people of Canada, if you really want to, the worst thing you could do to them is put them under United Nations jurisdiction. How has the United Nations ever improved one life? What have they, if you have visceral hatred for the Indigenous people, which I suggest you don't do. I suggest you want the best for them, which is not the United Nations taking over their stuff. But if you just hate the Indigenous people, you just viscerally hate the Mi'kmaq, and the Algonquin, and the Iroquois, and the Huron, and even the Métis. You just hate them so much, you just want them to suffer. Pass UNDRIP. Like, there really is no better way to screw over the entire First Nations community. And they're saying, you know what, who should be in charge of these guys? The United Nations. They've never messed anything up. They've never sexually abused the children they claim to make their lives better. They've never embezzled millions of the dollars meant for actual infrastructure projects into their own bank accounts. Oh, wait, they've done all those things? But no, we love the Indigenous. We love them so much. Justin Trudeau loves them. That's just why he's, giving sovereignty to the United Nations. All righty then. So I'm going to talk about a story that came up that was rather sad. and tragic. We all heard about it, and it was the man who was stabbed to death outside a mosque. And I'm going to read you a bit of this news article from the CBC. Man charged in stabbing death of mosque caretaker followed hate group online. Okay? So you can bring up the title of this, but I'm just going to read outside of it, and there are a lot of problems. And as I said, like, you know, heartfelt condolences to Mohammed Asim Zaif's and his entire family. This is a horrible story. So just a bit of a background here. You see it. This is the story we're going to go over. This man was a caretaker outside a mosque, and because of COVID-19 restrictions, not everyone could go in at the same time. So I think he was waiting outside to either be in the next wave in or sort of keeping, you know, he was outside because of COVID-19, and it was a mosque, and he's a Canadian, and Canadians are allowed to hang out outside religious institutions, hopefully. And he was straight up murdered by a psychopathic or sociopathic man who, you know, in a motivated hate crime. So can we call this a terrorist attack? I'm going to make the case for yes. I'll also make the case for why we shouldn't pursue terrorism charges against the individual, and how we need to solve this, because this is clearly a motivated hate crime underlined by a fanatical evil ideology. So the other problem is media coverage, okay? And the CBC, we all know I have no love for it, but we need to have a serious conversation about how do we tackle and how do we deal with extremist groups. And I think anyone who's watched the show knows I try and have those conversations, you know, more often than most people, okay? So the type of group that this guy was following online was a satanic neo-Nazi organization. Both of those things bad. Nazis bad, Satan bad. The problem here is, I'm going to go on, is my problem is the CBC here. Oh, and the neo-Nazi Satanists. But they talk about, you know, so the man charged stabbing a volunteer caretaker to death at a Toronto mosque shared what appears to be content from a satanic neo-Nazi group in social media posts, according to an organization that tracks online extremism. That organization is a anti-hate group. I do not like that organization. It is clearly politically biased and is run by a bunch of cowards and fools. But they are right when they say satanic neo-Nazis are bad. Satan bad, neo-Nazis bad. Okay. Now the problem is they name the assailant here. Okay, so the research actually shows you shouldn't name the guy who did the killing. His name is, you know, something von something, okay? You know, very non, you know, he's not Osama bin Laden. It's Whitey von White something, okay? Charged with first-degree murder, should be convicted of first-degree murder with aggravated hate crimes. You know, his victim is clearly the victim here. There should be no articles put out in the mainstream media how the terrorist family here is actually the real victims. The real victim is the man who was stabbed to death, and his family. The problem is they then go on and say that they're not going to name the hate group here because they don't want to give the hate group any attention, and that's very important. But they name him and give him attention. Like, that's not what the literature says. The literature says that if you name the people and turn them into individuals, then a psychotic individual, right, an evil person, could then go and say, you know, this guy killed this many Muslims, this guy killed this many Muslims, this guy killed this many Muslims, I'm going to kill this many Muslims. This guy killed so many Kafirs, this guy killed X amount of Kafirs, you know, this guy killed that many Kafirs, I want to be a, you know, I want to be a martyr like that. This guy killed this many Christians. Like, again, you could do it on sort of any sort of metric there, but this is what spawns it, is when you name the people. So they got that wrong. They named the person, but they wouldn't name the hate group. We need to name the hate group because what there should be is there should be pressure for the Canadian government to look at the satanic neo-Nazi hate group and declare it, you know, an extremist organization, right? This is where things like this need to go, right? And we talked about the honor and shame thing, right? We should not honor or give him any twisted version of honor to the terrorist or the psychopath who did the murdering here. He's a murderer. That's bad. We all agree on that, okay? So don't name him. But the group that he was affiliated with, we should start looking into this group. We should say, okay, what is the ideology of this group? Oh, they think Hitler is literally God? Okay, here's why they're against, you know, Western values. You know, this is paganism, it's hedonism, it's Satanism, it's neo-Nazism. There's so many things that we can talk about and all the ideological flaws that they put out. Right, but we don't even get to have that conversation because we can't name the group they're affiliated with. That's insane. That's fundamentally insane. That's like if 9/11 happened and we just put up pictures of the 19 hijackers, talked to them, and said, yeah, they just blew up the thing. Like, no. We need to find out. Family connections. Why do they do this? What do they believe in? Was there a common connection? Because we need to know this group. What if there are other people who are supporting this type of group online or whatever in Canada? That would be grounds to assuming they have some sort of motivated, hatred or part of an extremist organization. Right? This is what I said. Like, this is why, when we see, like, let's say if it's an Islamic terrorist attack, that's the way, and the guy followed this Muslim Brotherhood group and was part of, this online jihadi meme stash, we should look at this and say, what is it doing? Is there anyone else in his circle of friends also connected to these groups? That might be a great way to investigate these hate crimes. See if there's more hate crimes on the horizon. Right? Because this isn't doing a good job of counteracting the ideology that this guy did. Like, we want to counter extremist ideology. The point is, we want to destroy this organization and the ideological foundations it stands on so no one else goes around stabbing random Muslims outside of mosques. Because that's sociopathic behavior. You can't do that. Right? But this article is so insane that it does the exact opposite. It goes on, it starts with people, and then it starts naming other groups. And as other groups talk about why hatred is bad. Now we actually get comment from the World Sikh Organization, which has open Khalistani ties. Why are we talking to the Khalistanis about a white dude stabbing a Muslim guy? Why? What do the Khalistanis have to say about this? I don't care. I don't care. Like, what nonsense is this? And this is what I'm talking about. Like, it isn't like the evil Muslim whatever, or the white supremacist whatever, when something bad happens to your community that's causing all this stuff and infiltrating the media, and we're like, no, the media sucks. It legitimately sucks. This is just trash. This is idiotic, dumb trash. Like, this doesn't help anyone. Like, this doesn't help the family's victim. It makes everything worse and nothing better. And even when it supports your narrative, like you would have had me if you had gone and said, this is what this neo-Nazi satanic hate group is. You would have had me saying, you would have had me research that neo-Nazi hate group, go through and say, okay, here's their foundation, here's where they are in Canada, here's their strength, they're mostly in Serbia, whatever, it's a whatever, here's how you counteract it, here's a conservative commentator telling you why these groups are evil and why we should stand with the family of the victim here. You could get that. But instead, we just get the guy's name, who I don't want to name because I don't want more Muslim people to get stabbed. I don't want to sort of play up this sort of martyred for the cause narrative that the media likes to do. It's so... And of course, we get the World Sikh Organization of Canada. Why? Of course we need to talk to the Khalistanis about this. Why? By the way, Amarpreet Gurwal? I wonder if he's related to Raj Gurwal. I probably should have looked that one up. Raj Gurwal, of course, is a disgraced Liberal MP, Khalistani guy who didn't declare $6 million in loans, or, blood money? Gambling debt payback? Or whatever it was. Come on. This is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. Like, I feel so bad for this family. And I can understand their anger of if they're reading this and seeing that they're just not taking us seriously. They're just not taking us seriously, and that's a big shame. All right. So right now we're going to have a word from this week's sponsors, Lululemon. So this week's sponsor is Lululemon. Now, you might know there are two things we try and do here at Uninterrupted. 1, decolonize gender. It's a major priority of mine. And 2, resist capitalism, which is why we were sponsoring and partnering up with Lululemon for their seminar on decolonizing gender, which will focus on resisting capitalism. Yes, that was a real ad by the real Lululemon, and yes, they are now my official sponsor. Are they giving me money? No, but they've given me a smile on my face. So, you might remember Lululemon as the pants that cost more than $100 to, I don't know, the yoga pants. Basically, they're the only pants that are able to show off the female genitalia. And they are decolonizing I am not joking. Straight face. I believe in Lululemon decolonizing gender. Yes. You see, back in the day, you had a bunch of indigenous people. Where are they? Doesn't matter. They're just all indigenous everywhere. And then the white man came and started looking and saying, man, woman, man, woman, man, woman, man, and just arbitrary. And that presumably is what is how smallpox was created, because it was just small and poxy and like gender. So we have to decolonize gender, because that's the number one issue facing the Native American and Canadian communities today, is colonial structures pertaining to gender. Yes, the fact that it's that we've brainwashed the poor indigenous children into thinking that it requires a man and a woman together to make a baby. With Lululemon's help, we will also get rid of that. Now, another big problem is, obviously here, is capitalism, and Lululemon wants you to resist capitalism, presumably by buying their products or not buying their products. It wasn't very clear, and I probably should go to that seminar. But just again, we want to remind you that we must, at Lululemon and Uninterrupted, we are partnering to decolonize gender, which is, of course, the biggest problem facing Native people on reserves today is colonial structures around gender and resisting capitalism. So I'm not sure if Lululemon's saying if you're going to be rioting over anything, you should burn down a Lululemon store, but that's where we're going. All right. Let us go advertising over. I wonder if I get sued for that. I get sued for a lot of things. Will that be one of them? Tune in next week on Who's Suing Daniel Today? I mean, last week's sponsor, remember, was don'tsuedaniel.com, which I still recommend and highly recommend. You go to don'tsuedaniel.com and sign our pledge to stop suing me for frivolous nonsense. Amen. All right. Speaking of things that make no sense, Joe Biden. Joe Biden is in the news, but not for Joe Biden things. Joe Biden is in the news for Hunter Biden things. So here you have the article from the Daily Wire that let's go through. Breaking, Hunter Biden received millions from wife of ex-Moscow mayor, paid suspects allegedly ties to trafficking, had contacts with individuals linked to Chinese military, Senate report alleges. Now, the had contacts with individuals linked to trafficking, from what I'm reading, it just sounds like Hunter Biden spent tens of thousands of dollars on prostitutes. He could have been charged in a larger trafficking ring, and I'm sure the people he's paying are, but it sounds like Hunter Biden just really liked using bribe money for prostitutes. So don't go saying I haven't defended Hunter Biden before. Okay. So let's read some of the key findings here. Early in 2015, the former acting deputy chief of missions U.S. Embassy in Kiev, Ukraine, George Kent, raised concerns to officials in the Vice President Joe Biden's office about the perception of conflict of interest with respect to Hunter Biden's role on Burisma's board. Kent's concerns went unaddressed, and in September 2016, he emphasized in an email to his colleagues, quote, "Furthermore, the presence of Hunter Biden on Burisma board was very awkward for U.S. officials pushing anti-corruption agenda in the Ukraine." I'll do a bit of a recap after some of this. In 2015, State Department official Amos Hochstein raised concerns with Vice President Biden, as well as with Hunter Biden, that Hunter Biden's position on Burisma's board enabled Russian disinformation efforts and risked undermining U.S. policy in Ukraine. Now, as you remember, Hunter Biden has no background in energy. However, he was put on Ukraine's so a Ukrainian energy giant, Burisma, he was on their board, receiving tens of thousands of dollars a month, basically for being Joe Biden's son. Pelosi and Romney also have family connections to this as well. The awkwardness for the Obama administration officials continued well past his presidency. Former Secretary of State John Kerry had knowledge of Hunter Biden's role on Burisma's board, but when asked about it at a town hall event in New Hampshire on December 8th, 2019, Kerry falsely said, "I had no knowledge about any of that, none, no." Evidence to the contrary is detailed in Section 5. John Kerry lied about something to do with foreign policy? Never. Oh, wait, always. Get those two confused all the time. Silly me. Former Assistant Secretary of State to European and Eurasian Affairs Victoria Nuland testified that confronting oligarchs would send an anti-corruption message in Ukraine. Kent told the committee that Zelensky was odious oligarch. However, in December 2015, instead of following the U.S. objectives of confronting oligarchs, Vice President Biden's staff advised him to avoid commenting on Zlochevsky, recommended he say, "It's not going to get into naming names or accusing individuals." So, don't out the Russian oligarchs. Here we have the Democratic Party saying, yes, intelligence is saying that Russia is a problem and there's corruption in Russia, and we should do something and be anti-corruption and anti-Russian officials. Then the Democrats saying, no, please back the corrupt Russian officials. Don't worry, they're very, very concerned about Donald Trump colluding with Russia. Remember, it was Putin who put him into office. Hunter Biden was on Burisma's board when Zlochevsky paid a $7 million bribe to officials serving under Ukraine's Prosecutor General, Ility Yarmara, to quote, shut the case against Zelensky. Kent testified that this bribe occurred in December 2014, months after Hunter Biden joined the board. And after learning about it, he and a resident legal advisor reported this allegation to the FBI. So it was not a secret that there was corruption on the Burisma board. Under the time of Hunter Biden, it was reported to U.S. officials. Hunter Biden did nothing. We'll skip that one. Andres Tenetsko, Democrats' personification of Russian disinformation, met with Obama administration officials, including Elizabeth Zentos, a member of Obama's National Security Council, at least 10 times. The Democrat lobbying firm Blue Star Strategies contracted Tenetsko from 2016-2017 and continued to request his assistance as recent as summer of 2019. A recent news article detailed the extensive contacts between Tenetsko and Obama administration officials. This also has to do with the Steele dossier and all of that, so everything's coming together. Another $140,000. Archer received $142,300 from Kenneth Reskiev in Kazakhstan, purportedly for a car. Same day, Vice President Joe Biden appeared with Ukrainian Prime Minister, the former one, Yatsenyuk, and addressed Ukraine's legislators in Kiev regarding Russians' actions in Crimea. Hunter Biden received $3.5 million wire transfer from Elena Bertania, the wife of former mayor of Moscow. Do we have a picture of this woman? Please bring it up here. Where is she? Yes, there she is, circled there. Does anyone know who she's sitting beside? Is that Vladimir Putin? Is that Vladimir McPoots? It's Vladimir McPoots. Okay, remember, Donald Trump is a puppet of Vladimir Putin, but that woman is wiring Hunter Biden $3.5 million. So we're talking about money. Hunter Biden opened a bank account with Guangdong to fund a $100,000 global spending spree with James Biden and Sarah Biden, so Biden's going wild. Hunter Biden had business associations with Yi Xinjiang, Gangwon, Dong, and other Chinese nationals linked to the Communist government and People's Liberation Army. Oh boy! These associations resulted in millions of dollars of cash flow. Hunter Biden paid non-resident women who were nationals of Russia or either Eastern European countries who appear to be linked in Eastern European prostitution or human trafficking ring. So he just paid a lot of money for high-end escorts, that one. So they might be blowing that one out of proportion, but millions of dollars of cash flow with the Chinese government and the People's Liberation Army and $3.5 million from the wife of a Russian oligarch? I'm trying to listen for the screams of the Russiagate people talking about Russia collusion. It's deadly silent. Deadly silent. Could that be? Could it? I mean, no, there's no way. There's no way. How could the people who spent the last 4 years screaming about Russia collusion and the previous 8 years before that, trying to advance ties with Russia. How could they be silent when it's shown that the Democrats actually had the ties to Russia? Does it have something to do with them when they were in power advocating for closer business ties with Russia to do things like this? Could it be? No, because that would mean that the Democrats are just obviously lying from the start. And that would mean that all this evidence that the Republicans put together would mean that Joe Biden was corrupt and lying? That the impeachment of Donald Trump over the Ukraine nonsense was BS? That Joe Biden, if anything, should be under investigation for ties with Russia? I'm not saying anything. No, I'm absolutely saying that, yes, that's the truth. That the Russiagate collusion hoax was absolute nonsense. If you're watching me since 2016, I did not like Donald Trump's rhetoric on Russia in the 2016 election. I did not like candidate Trump's position on Russia. It was very reasonable. However, it was in line with my previous 8 years of not liking President Obama's policies on kissing up to Russia. Now, all of a sudden, the Democrats flip-flopped and pretended they were all of a sudden hard on Russia while still doing the same closed-door deals with Russia. Then President Trump came to power and was much better than candidate Trump. Instead of bending over to Russia, he fought off Russian-backed militants in Syria. He armed the Ukraine. He did not recognize the annexation of Crimea. These were all good things. Now, is Donald Trump a perfect geopolitical player? No, I didn't like what he did in Turkey and Syria. But President Trump's been not in the bed with Vladimir Putin. But there is no argument to be made that Donald Trump is more in bed with Russia than Joe Biden, right? And the reason this whole impeachment thing is Joe Biden, and we have the video of Joe Biden bragging that he killed $1 billion deal to Russia to get a prosecution into the Ukraine, right? He canceled deals. He put political pressure on the Ukrainians to cancel an investigation into the Ukrainian company Burisma, where his son was on the board with no experience in energy, just cocaine. Literally, we're talking about a cokehead who loves prostitutes, having government security and millions of dollars in utter corruption. Okay. Now, Joe Biden's excuse, if you remember the excuse, was, oh, no, it wasn't specifically about the Burisma thing. The prosecutor was corrupt, and we were just canceling the aid for generalized corruption in the Ukraine. With $1 billion. Then when Donald Trump wanted to investigate that claim and see if it was, founded in any sort of a reality of the evidence we just went into, the left started screaming, this is abuse of power, right? He's using the position of president to look in for political gains. And yes, if there was absolutely no proof that Joe Biden was screwing around, you could argue this. But Joe Biden's excuse that there was generalized corruption in the Ukraine should be Trump's excuse that he withheld aid that ended up military aid to Ukraine, which they ended up getting because of generalized corruption in the Ukraine. You can't have it both ways. But this is what the Democrats are trying to do, literally have it both ways. Literally holding two different thoughts in their head at the same time. It's Orwellian newthink, and it drives me crazy. All right. Now, good news is Zoom has decided that they are not fans of terrorists. You know who is a fan of terrorists? Idiot Jews. So, Jews, I love you. I'm a Jew, you're a Jew. I hate the general Zionist lobby. I think they're a bunch of ineffective cowards. Useless cowards, as I've said before. And they've tried to tell me they're not, but we know they are. Meet the useful idiots of the Jewish left. So let's bring up these tweets from If Not Now. They are very, very, very upset that Leila Khalid had been canceled to give a speech at Al-Qaeda University. Sorry, San Francisco State University of Al-Qaeda. Now, they wanted to give a speech with Leila Khalid, who is a convicted terrorist member of a terrorist organization. So that's tweet number 1, lamenting how it's just the far right who wanted to stop. And then tweet number 2, they're still going on about how terrible it is that right-wing groups who claim to speak for the Jewish people wanted to get Leila Khalid canceled and all that. Okay. Leila Khalid is a convicted terrorist and still a member of a registered terrorist organization in the United States today, the PFLP. She hijacked one plane, tried to detonate a grenade on that plane, then tried to hijack a second plane, He was convicted of terrorism, never spent a day in jail, and is still unrepentant. So you have an unrepentant, convicted terrorist who's still part of a terrorist organization, hijacked 2 planes, tried to detonate a grenade on one of those planes, as a hero for, of course, gender and teaching Palestine and blah, 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 and blah, 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 blah. Can we nuke If Not Now? Can we just nuke it? Okay. All kidding aside, because, again, and If Not Now is going to take that out of context. No, we shouldn't nuke If Not Now. We should get my brother out of that organization, then drop a bomb. Okay. We're joking. And I would actually, you know what? You know what? If Not Now, not joking. I'd love to see If Not Now take a position that terrorism is bad. Any type of terrorism. I would like If Not Now to say bombing innocent civilians is bad all the time. When Hamas does it, it's bad. When people do it who non-Hamas, also bad. You know what? If Not Now, have fun trying to stake out that position. So here you have these idiot, useful idiot Jews. And their thought is, oh my God, if we just like are more intersectional and we just go even further left, if we just, you know, I want to say something very dirty, but this studio is approved by Jesus, so we're not going to go there. But the thought is, if we just bend over enough, if we shine the terrorist shoes, if we lick them clean, if we absolutely masochistically subjugate ourselves to the very whims of the worst terrorists in the world, then maybe they'll realize we're just good people and they shouldn't kill us. Yay! Yes, I know it says in their charter, literally, we want to kill every single Jew in the world, but if I just show them that I'm an intersectional feminist ally, maybe they won't want to kill me, just my entire family. I'll be the good guy. This is the delusion of the left-wing Jews, and I hate If Not Now. I despise the organization. It's not as bad as independent Jewish voices. Like that should be a terrorist group. But If Not Now is just the biggest smart idiots. If Not Now is the greatest example of what's wrong with our society. Because it's just an umbrella organization of random left-wing activist groups under the momentum. There's Sunrise, there's If Not Now, and there's another one. It's basically, do you like trees? Then you'll love Palestinians, and they all just come together. And If Not Now pretends to be a Jewish advocacy group. And I love it that they're complaining about like these right-wing Zionists tend to speak for the Jewish people. They don't speak for the Jewish people. Then they go, but we speak for the Jewish people. None of you do. I hate that. And as I've said, anyone who says, as a representative of the black community, don't listen to that guy. That guy doesn't speak for the black community. I don't speak for the Jewish community. You don't speak for whatever it is community you're trying to represent right now. Right? It's so stupid. I hate these idiots so much. And not once, if you saw in those tweets, not once did they mention that Leila Khalid is a terrorist. Now you might say, oh my God, terrorism, it's just it's like a construct, it's a colonial construct, just like gender, right? You know, terrorism is a social construct. I don't know, blah, 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 blah. Leila Khalid's a hero, a feminist hero. May I do some poetry for you? Yes, we're going to do some spoken word poetry directly from Leila Khalid's autobiography. And remember, this is not a terrorist, but this is some of the poetry she wrote. My beloved, I shall return on wings of eagles to you. I shall return repeatedly to spread terror in the heart of the enemy. I shall flag the enemy. I shall pulverize him. Poem number 1. My favorite line is, spread terror in the heart of the enemy, from Not a Terrorist, Leila Khalid. Poem number 2. Snaps only, guys. Remember, clapping, that's violence. Snapping only. Oh, Palestine! Exclamation mark there. I'm ready to die, and I shall live by dying for thee. Interesting choice. I shall live by dying for thee. Definitely not a terrorist. Oh, my homeland, my love, my only love, I shall revolt against thine enemies, all enemies. I shall make bombs from the atoms of my body and weave the new Palestine from the fabric of my soul. Within all the power and the power of my sisters, we shall convert our existence into bombs and redeem, and then at last maintain. We shall fight and fight. From, again, Not a Terrorist, Leila Khalid, hijacker of 2 planes, grenade setter offer attemptedly on 1. I shall make bombs from the atoms of my body and weave a new Palestine from the fabric of the soul. We shall convert our existence into bombs to redeem and spread terror into the hearts of the enemy. To recap, hijacks a plane, tries to detonate grenade on that plane of Jews. Tries to hijack a second plane, gets convicted of terrorist charges. doesn't spend a day in jail, doesn't repent for her actions, writes poems about spreading terror in the hearts of enemy, writes poems about making bombs out of her soul, or whatever it is, gets invited to speak at San Francisco State University of Al-Qaeda, gets canceled, left gets angry. Now, I get what we're talking about, cancel culture, and there's the whole thing of, no, there's private platforms. I want everyone to be able to speak, right? I think free speech is great. However, you do not have to host a literal convicted anti-Semitic terrorist. Like the guy in Canada who stabbed the Muslim in the neck. If he were to be giving a speaking tour, let's say, in Norway, if Norway was to zoom him in and he gave a tour on sort of resisting Islam, a speech on resisting Islam at a Norwegian university, do you not think the left would go ballistic? I would go ballistic. Yes, bring people with controversial views. You can bring on, a wacky imam who says, crazy stuff. Put him against Robert Spencer. That would be an interesting debate, right? But I wouldn't have this terrorist, Leila Khalid, in a debate with another terrorist, guy who stabbed innocent Muslim guy. That's just two terrorists saying terrorist things, and we all know that's a lie now. Most of us know terrorism is bad, but not if you go to universities. This is why you should just probably not pay for your kids' university unless they're getting an engineering degree. All right. Moving on to our next story, which I kind of forgot right now. What is it? Can we just cue it up here? All right, the next thing. Oh, yes, the Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I love this picture. Let's keep this up there for a while. All right. Ruth Bader Ginsburg died. May she rest in peace. And the world has gone crazy, absolutely crazy, because the threat from the Democrats is not, hey, we need to, have a more balanced thing. The threat is basically, if you fill her seat, we will then institute 2 more seats on the Supreme Court, fill them with other radical leftists, because we don't respect the institutions. And I made a video saying about how if the left really cared about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, they should, push the fact that they shouldn't create a super legislature inside the Supreme Court. I go over this like every time in the show, the importance of an independent judiciary, blah, 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 blah. But what I'd like to do instead is, 1, honor the life of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and 2, tell everyone to shut up about abortion because it's really annoying right now. But Ruth Bader Ginsburg first. Now, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, in the Jewish religion, it is a tradition. So on New Year's, which was last week, Rosh Hashanah, one of the tenets of religion is on New Year's and on Yom Kippur, 10 days after, God writes in the book of life and death and decides who will live and who will die over the next year. So in the Jewish religion, if you die on the Erev of Rosh Hashanah, the night right before, the day before the New Year, that is an extremely holy thing. It means God blessed you and wanted you to live that entire year that you were destined to die. Jewish folklore, superstition, teaching, practice, whatever you want to call it, okay? So respect her on that, because that's when she died. It's considered a very holy thing in our religion. Okay. Now, if you really didn't like Ruth Bader Ginsburg as a justice, you're allowed to. I don't like what she, her judicial philosophy. I think a lot of my followers didn't. But her best friend, one of her best friends in life, was Antonin Scalia, who had the exact opposite philosophy. And they did love each other as friends and colleagues. And that's a really nice thing. And I want to sort of highlight that element of the relationship, because that's really what society needs right now with the rapid polarization, everyone trying to kill each other or yell at each other. The story of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, right, and Antonin Scalia is really important, because they disagreed on literally everything. But at the end of the day, they respected each other as friends and as colleagues. And, you can give a lot of context to what Ruth Bader Ginsburg did, even as a conservative, and say, it's pretty good. Like, she fought through a lot of initial gender discrimination, right? When she came on the Supreme Court, she was a trailblazer. At times, women's rights were not equal to men. So you can talk about the extraordinary circumstances that set into position the need for someone like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. You could talk about it. Now, I believe the opposite is sort of the Scalia approach, that if you do that, there is no sort of line of demarcation there. You kind of need the same laws for everyone. This is not the role of the court. It's actually the role of the legislature. Now, this is what I was talking about. The left should talk about sending the powers of the legislature back into the hands of the legislature, out of the hands of the president and the Supreme Court. Right? And now the left is also all of a sudden learning of the dangers of concentrated power in the executive office combined with the super legislature in the Supreme Court. What if a Republican president gets in and then appoints enough Supreme Court justices to have a majority? Well, then all of a sudden, that's not a great way for the country to run. You want the checks and balances back. Well, you had, however many years to do so. So that's sort of the Ruth Bader Ginsburg thing. And we have a lot of controversies now about justice and truth and whatever. And there is a line from Ruth Bader Ginsburg that I think is very valuable. And that's when she said, protest injustice and fight against injustice, but do it in a way that it inspires other people to join you, which is a very MLK view to civil rights. And it's something that I agree with in a lot of ways. Right, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was the one who said that Colin Kaepernick protests were stupid and idiotic. So right now you have the Colin Kaepernick protests, which is being, parodied with the taking a knee. That's what Kaepernick did, right? And that's now the new movement for the civil rights thing, which is now fired up about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who said that this whole thing was dumb because this is not what Black Lives Matter does. The radical left is not protesting in a way that inspires support. Not at all. Right? No one, it inspires fear. Some people are intimidated into lending support, but no one is inspired by what they're seeing in the street violence to come and join, right, for righteousness and all that. Right? So you kind of need to scale back. Right? And the way you need to do that is I think we should all focus on truth. So recently, today, we have the news that there was only some charges in the Breonna Taylor case. And the Breonna Taylor case is a great example of why lies will destroy us. Because the story that we were all originally told about Breonna Taylor from her family that proved to be not true is it was a no-knock warrant. They knocked before they served the warrant. They were in the wrong place. They were not in the wrong place. They were in the right place. Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, who she was living with, fired on the police officers before they fired on him. They served the warrant. They identified themselves. They entered the apartment. They were then fired upon, and the police fired back, killing the boyfriend and Breonna Taylor. Right? So the fact that she was just lying in bed and the police came and raided her house and just came to her bed and shot her there, that wasn't the real story. No, is that a tragedy? Absolutely. Did Breonna Taylor deserve to die because of her boyfriend? No. Are the police responsible for murder here? Likely not. Right? They're serving a warrant, they identify themselves, they were fired upon, they returned fire, an innocent woman died in the crossfire. That's horrible. That's not first-degree murder. And you have a bunch of people like Sean King, an activist, and Sean King's sort of changing his tune now, right? Saying, pretending that the original story. And they've now listened to the news story, and people like Sean King are now saying, well, there's nothing justified killing her. And you're right, there is no justification to killing Breonna Taylor, who was unarmed. There is a reason she died, and that's because she was living with a boyfriend who a warrant was sought against for, I believe it was criminal drugs and drug trafficking. The warrant was served. He fired upon police officers. They fired back at him. His girlfriend was killed in the crossfire. That's terrible. Right? But to pretend that this is just police officers randomly walking into black women's apartments and hunting them to the death, it's not true, right? So that's why you're not seeing charges for murder against these guys. And if you are wondering, maybe look up the actual details of the case. And this is why we need a bit of truth. And maybe, if you watch this, try and be inspired by Ruth Bader Ginsburg herself and try and protest for Breonna Taylor that in a way that would inspire me to support you. That's your friendly message for the end of the night. So that's been tonight's show. So great talking with all of you, either now or in the future or in the present now, this is then the past. Who knows? Before we fall into a time paradox, I'm going to end the show, and I'll see you all next week. Same bad time, same bad place.